In human-computer interaction, there is a persistent contradiction. When surveyed, internet users consistently report deep anxieties about their digital privacy. Yet those same users continue to upload intimate details of their lives to platforms like Facebook and Instagram. For years, academic researchers explained this behavior through a model called the privacy calculus. This theory assumes that you act as a rational economic agent, constantly weighing the perceived rewards of posting against the potential risks of data misuse. According to this logic, when the perceived threat of a privacy violation exceeds the social benefit, a user's willingness to share should drop. The persistent gap between what users say about privacy and what they actually post is known as the privacy paradox, indicating that this risk-reward math isn't actually dictating behavior. To understand why the calculus breaks down, we have to separate privacy risks into two distinct vectors. Vertical risks involve institutions, corporations, or governments harvesting your data. Horizontal risks involve your peers, friends, employers, or strangers accessing your personal information. If a rational calculation of these risks doesn't stop people from sharing, the internal cost-benefit model is insufficient for understanding social media. The answer requires looking outward, at the mechanics of social influence. When faced with the dangers of oversharing, policymakers typically prescribe a specific solution: critical media literacy. The working assumption is that if you educate a user about how algorithmic curation operates and how their data is harvested, that user will develop the skills to resist the pressure to post. A 2023 study by Philip Mazur, Natalia Bazarova, and Dominic DeFranzo tested this exact premise. Their data revealed that in social media environments, digital literacy completely fails to stop users from conforming to risky disclosure behaviors. We are going to step through the conceptual model from Mazur and his colleagues to see exactly why the standard educational approach fails and what actually drives our decisions to share. This structural framework tracks forces driving self-disclosure, weighing privacy concerns against sharing benefits. Vertical privacy concerns track fears of companies exploiting data. Yet researchers found these vertical concerns have zero significant negative effect on behavior. Fear of corporate data harvesting doesn't stop posting. This sharply contrasts with horizontal privacy concerns, which measure the fear of immediate social consequences, like peer judgment, unwanted access by other users, or identity theft. The data shows that horizontal concerns act as a measurable deterrent to sharing. Users are demonstrably modifying their behavior out of fear of other people in their network, not the platform itself. However, this deterrent is easily overwhelmed by positive drivers. The perceived benefit of self-presentation, the ability to curate a favorable image online, acts as a massive positive counterforce, predicting disclosure at 3 times the strength of horizontal concerns. Altogether, privacy concerns and the perceived benefits of use account for 26% of the behavioral variance between individuals in the study. Even when operating within a purely rational cost-benefit calculation, users systematically ignore institutional surveillance in order to secure immediate social rewards. But humans rarely make decisions in a vacuum. In situations of uncertainty, users rely on social heuristics, observing the environment around them to figure out what behavior is appropriate. Social cues fall into distinct categories. Descriptive norms measure what others do. Injunctive norms measure what others approve. These are typically signaled through likes and positive comments. Both independently drive users to disclose more. The third category is the subjective norm. This represents peer pressure, the direct perception of what others expect you to do, carrying an implicit threat of social sanction if you fail to comply. Among all the social variables measured, this perceived expectation from the group emerged as the strongest single predictor of a user's willingness to share personal information. Combined, these 3 norm perceptions explain an additional 17% of the variance in disclosure behavior, proving that the social environment exerts a distinct and powerful gravitational pull. This dot plot illustrates how norm perceptions hold up across platforms. Light dots represent Instagram, dark dots Facebook, showing social norm influence remains remarkably stable. Furthermore, marker shapes, circles for visual sharing, triangles for text, demonstrate this pressure dictates behavior across entirely different communication modes. Whether you are posting text on Facebook or photos on Instagram, These unwritten social rules act as universal reference points, overriding individual hesitation across the entire social media ecology. Behavioral science often points to the theory of normative social behavior, which posits that social norms should amplify each other. Under this framework, seeing others post should become even more persuasive if you also see that behavior being heavily rewarded. The misuse study found the exact opposite. When they tested for interactions between these variables, the results were statistically near zero. Instead of interacting, these normative pressures operate independently. They simply stack on top of each other, pushing the user toward disclosure through separate parallel channels. This structural reality is exactly what makes the design of these platforms so effective. A user doesn't need to experience every type of peer pressure at once. Receiving just one strong normative signal is enough to compel them to share. The social pressure to forfeit your privacy isn't a complex equation you have to solve. It is a compounding weight pressing down from multiple independent directions. This path diagram introduces our final two variables, critical media literacy and media-related self-reflection, shown here as potential buffers against self-disclosure. The dotted lines represent the researcher's hypothesis. A user trained to critically evaluate curation and reflect on their own habits should theoretically intercept the effect of social norms. But the data unequivocally rejected this hypothesis, showing no significant moderating relationship whatsoever. Even among participants who scored highly on self-reflection, users who actively paused to consider the risks before posting, the pull to conform to the group remains statistically identical to everyone else. Education does not prevent oversharing because the variables are fighting on different battlefields. The innate human desire to belong to a group consistently overpowers an intellectual knowledge of the privacy risks. Teaching a user how the digital trap works provides no practical defense when the social environment demands they step into it anyway. The continuous stream of intimate data flowing onto social platforms is not the result of users failing to understand the risks. It is driven by a strict hierarchy of social expectations that effortlessly overrides both rational privacy fears and educational interventions. The architecture of these networks, the curated feeds, the precise deployment of likes, the algorithmic amplification of popular posts, acts as a highly tuned engine designed to surface and enforce these exact norms. Consequently, legislative and corporate policies that place the burden of privacy on user education are structurally flawed. Teaching digital literacy is functionally useless if the platform itself is weaponizing our instinct to conform. The fact that we care about our privacy while simultaneously giving it away is not a paradox at all. It is a feature of the social media environment, functioning exactly as designed.